5 years had passed since the closing of the breach. Amara stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station, named Unity, that hung in space between Earth and the Moon. The massive structure served as headquarters for the combined human, Sylvari alliance and as a monument to those who had fallen in the void. War through the reinforced windows, she could see Earth blue and beautiful. The scars of the conflict were healing, the evacuated colonies being rebuilt. The alliance had brought unprecedented peace and prosperity to both species. Technology, cultural exchange, and mutual defense had united former enemies. Moonwrath hung at her side, never far from her reach. The sword had changed over the years. Its blade now held flecks of silver that caught the light like stars. The symbols along its length had stabilized, forming patterns that told the story of the battle against the Void Ambassador. Blackwood Commander. Alari approached, bowing slightly to her. The Sylvari had changed, too, becoming less formal with humans, though still maintaining their dignity. The council is assembled. They await your address. Amara nodded. Thank you, Commander. She had never grown fully comfortable with her title, Ambassador to the Sylvari Keeper, of Moonwrath, Guardian of the Alliance. These were heavy burdens for someone who had once been a simple archaeologist, but she carried them as best she could. The council chamber was circular, with representatives from both species seated in alternating positions, human and Sylvari side by side as equals. At the center stood a pedestal where Amara would place Moonwrath during the ceremony. The sword served as both symbol and reminder of what had been sacrificed and what might one day return. As she entered, all rose in respect. She walked to the center and placed the sword on the pedestal. Its glow intensified slightly, responding to the importance of the moment. 5 years ago today, Amara began, our worlds faced extinction. The void came to consume all we were, all we had built, all we might become. Many gave their lives to preserve our future. She paused, looking around the chamber, meeting the eyes of both humans and Sylvari. They gave everything, so that we might have this chance on the far side of the chamber. Vex lay curled, his massive body somehow fitting comfortably in the space designed for him. The dragon had become her closest advisor and friend in the years since Lysandra's sacrifice. He caught her eye, nodding slightly, encouraging her to continue. Today we commemorate their sacrifice, she went on. But more importantly, we look to the future. The alliance between our peoples grows stronger each day. Our scientists work together to understand the void. Our warriors train together, preparing for its eventual return. Our children learn each other's languages, histories, cultures. The barriers that once separated us fall one by one. The sword on the pedestal pulsed as if in agreement. Its light cast Amara's shadow long and regal behind her. For a moment, some in the chamber thought they saw another shadow beside hers, taller with pointed ears, but it vanished when they looked directly at it. The breach will open again, Amara continued, her voice strong. This we know, the cycle cannot be broken, only prepared for. In 4,000 years, perhaps sooner, our descendants will face the void once more. It is our responsibility, our sacred duty, to ensure they are ready, that they do not repeat our mistakes, that they stand united from the beginning. She placed her hand on Moonwrath, feeling the familiar warmth, the connection that had never faded. In her mind, she felt that faint presence, that echo of Lysandra that had remained with her through the soul binding. Sometimes in dreams, they still spoke, the Queen, offering guidance, counsel, and occasionally sharp criticism of Amara's decisions. The path forward will not be easy, she acknowledged. There will be disagreements, conflicts of interest and understanding. But we must remember, what unites us is stronger than what divides us. We share this corner of the galaxy, this moment in time, this common enemy. We cannot afford the luxury of distrust. Amara lifted Moonwrath from the pedestal, holding it high. The sword caught the light, its silver flecks glowing like stars. This sword once represented the fury of a queen, she said. Now it represents the hope of two peoples together. We are stronger than either could be alone. The council members stood applauding her words. Humans and Sylvari alike recognized the truth in them. The journey had been difficult. trust building slowly after millennia of separation, but progress was undeniable. The alliance had weathered its early challenges and grown stronger. After the ceremony, Amara retreated to her private chambers aboard the station. She placed Moonwrath on its stand by the window where starlight could fall upon it. The sword seemed to drink in the light, the silver flecks brightening. "You did well today, Kame." Vex's mental voice. The dragon had followed her silently, as was his custom. He settled himself in the larger portion of the room, designed to accommodate his bulk. "Thank you," Amara replied aloud. She poured herself a glass of water and sat looking out at the stars. "Sometimes, I wonder if she would approve of what we've built." The dragon made a sound like distant thunder, his version of a chuckle. "She would find fault with the details," he said. "She always did. But the foundation? Yes, I believe she would approve." Amara smiled. "Touching the sword gently, I still feel her sometimes," she admitted. "More than just memories, impressions, emotions. When I dream, she speaks to me." Vex nodded, unsurprised. "The soul binding was unique." He said, "No. Silveri and human had ever joined so completely, through a sword. Something of her essence remains, something of you transferred to her in those final moments. Your sacrifice would have left a similar echo in her, had your positions been reversed." "Do you think she's really gone?" Amara asked, voicing the question that had haunted her for 5 years, or just somewhere else, waiting. The dragon considered his scales shifting colors as he thought. "The universe holds many mysteries," he said finally. "Energy can neither be created nor destroyed merely. Transformed perhaps in sealing the breach, she became something else, something beyond our understanding." Amara touched the silver flecks in the blade. They seemed warmer than the rest of the sword. "I like to think she's watching," she said, "judging us, probably finding us wanting in 100 small ways but proud of the larger picture." Vex laughed again. "That does sound like her." A chime indicated an incoming communication. Amara activated the screen to see Admiral Foster now, Supreme Commander of the Human Defense Force Ambassador. "We have a situation," the Admiral said. "We detected an energy signature in the Kuiper Belt, similar to the breach readings but much smaller. Our Silvery colleagues confirm it matches no known phenomenon." Amara's heart raced. Moonwrath began to pulse, its glow intensifying. "Are we looking at another incursion?" she asked. "Unknown." Foster replied, "But a joint expedition is being prepared. The science vessel Harmony will depart within the hour. Given your unique experience with the Void, the Council requests your presence." Amara looked at Vex, who had risen to his full height, his wings half extended. "I will make preparations," the dragon said. When the communication ended, Amara stood looking out at the stars. The peaceful years had perhaps made her complacent. Had they truly believed the Void would wait 4,000 years before testing their defenses again? She lifted Moonwrath from its stand, feeling its familiar weight. The sword hummed in her hands, eager almost. "Excited something has changed," she said to Vex. "The sword feels different, alive." The dragon moved to her side, his ancient eyes studying the blade. The silver flecks were moving, swirling like a galaxy in miniature. "It's calling to something," Vex said. His mental voice held wonder and concern. "Something is answering the science vessel." Harmony represented the pinnacle of combined human and Silveri engineering. Sleek and powerful, it could cross the solar system in days rather than months. Its sensors were the most advanced ever created, capable of detecting quantum fluctuations and dimensional anomalies. Amara stood on the bridge, Moonwrath at her side as they approached the coordinates in the Kuiper Belt. The sword pulsed more strongly with each passing hour, its silver flecks swirling faster. Vex lay curled at the rear of the bridge, his massive body tense with anticipation. On screen, Captain Nora Chen ordered. The main view screen activated, showing the empty space ahead. Only it wasn't entirely empty. A small distortion hung there like heat shimmer on a summer day. It was nothing like the massive breach that had nearly consumed their worlds 5 years ago. This was subtle, almost delicate. Readings. Captain asked. Minimal energy signature science. Officer Mason replied, nothing like the breach. This is more like a ripple, a gentle folding of space-time, no sign of void. Entities. Amara felt Moonwrath pulling at her, urging her forward. The sword practically vibrated with eagerness, something she had never felt from it before. Move closer, she commanded, her voice holding the authority of her position. The ship edged forward, sensors at maximum sensitivity. The distortion grew slightly clearer, a small tear. In reality, no larger than a doorway stop, here Amara said, as Moonwrath began to glow brighter than she had seen in years. The sword pulled at her hand, trying to point itself toward the anomaly. Suddenly the tear widened slightly. A figure emerged, stepping through as if walking from one room to another, tall and slender, with opalescent skin and pointed ears. Her silver hair flowed around her like liquid mercury. Her eyes were the color of amethysts. Lysandra. The bridge crew stared in shock. The Silvari officers fell to their knees. Vex rose, to his full height, his mental voice broadcasting pure astonishment. Impossible, the dragon whispered. She fell. The breach consumed her. The figure smiled, that familiar expression that was not. The command center of the combined human and Silvari fleet buzzed with activity. Officers from both species worked side by side, despite the language barriers and cultural differences that separated them. The shared threat had created an uneasy alliance born of necessity, not trust. Holographic displays showed the solar system with the breach near Jupiter now fully open. A swirling vortex of darkness 30,000 miles across it pulsed with unnatural energies that disrupted sensors, and communications from its depths emerged, the void entities. They defied description, shifting masses of darkness with too many limbs and eyes that seemed to look inward rather than outward. They moved in ways that hurt the mind to watch, appearing in one place then another without crossing the space between. Some were small, no larger than a human. Others rivaled moons in size. All radiated an aura of wrongness that made both humans and Silvari physically ill when they drew too close. Admiral Foster stood at the central command station, her face illuminated by the red emergency lighting. Her uniform was rumpled. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. The evacuation ships from the outer colonies were still en route. Many of them would not make it. The first defense line has fallen, she reported as Amara and Lysandra entered the command center. They emerged from the breach faster than we anticipated. Hundreds of thousands of them. The Ganymede colony is gone. Europa will be overrun within hours. Lysandra studied the tactical display, her face betraying no emotion. How many ships did we lose? 17 human vessels, 5 Silvari scout ships. Foster replied, all hands lost. The entities simply absorbed the energy from our weapons, making them stronger, and the Silvari light lances effective against the smaller entities. Lysandra nodded, but the power requirements are too high. We cannot sustain that level of defense. Amara joined them at the display, Moonwrath pulsing gently at her side. Since the soul binding it rarely left her possession, she and Lysandra sharing custody of the weapon. What about the other sword, she asked. Have the training pairs made progress? Bex, who lay curled around the upper level of the command center, his massive body, providing strange comfort to the officers below, answered, some pairs have achieved basic harmonization. None have reached full soul binding as you and the Queen have. They need more time. We do not have, Lysandra said. Her fingers danced over the control panel, bringing up a new display. The breach continues to expand. If we do not act soon, it will engulf Jupiter, then spread outward. Nothing will stop it from reaching Earth. The other 6 swords had been distributed to carefully selected pairs, 1 Silvari warrior and 1 human soldier, each chosen for compatibility and mental discipline. They had trained around the clock, but what had taken Amara and Lysandra days to achieve could not be rushed for the others. The swords rejected wielders, who were not ready. We need a new strategy, Admiral Foster said. The defensive perimeter won't hold more than 12 hours at current rates. We need to take the fight to them. Lysandra nodded, her silver hair catching the light. A direct assault on the breach itself, she agreed. The seven swords together might be able to close it, sealing the void entities on the other side. But without full soul binding, Amara objected the other pairs won't be able to channel enough power. They must try. Lysandra replied, there is no alternative. Junior officer approached the admiral, whispering something in her ear. Foster's expression darkened. We have another problem, she announced. The civilian government is panicking. Some nations have launched their nuclear arsenals at the approaching entities against direct orders. Lysandra hissed in frustration. Fool's nuclear energy will only make them stronger. Those weapons must be recalled. Or destroyed. Foster shook her head. It's too late. The missiles have gone dark. Our override codes aren't working. The entities will absorb that energy and grow more powerful. The command center fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity in its fear had just made their enemies stronger. Lysandra turned to Amara, her violet eyes intense. This changes nothing. We proceed with the assault, but now we must move immediately before those weapons reach their targets. The swords are our only hope. Amara nodded, feeling the weight of two civilizations pressing down on her. How do we approach the breach? Our largest ships can't get close enough without being torn apart. We use the Shadow Wing. Lysandra replied. It's small, fast, and has the strongest shields in the fleet. It can carry the 7 pairs close enough to attempt the sealing. Vex lifted his massive head. The Shadow Wing is your personal vessel, my queen. You would risk it, I would risk everything. Lysandra said simply. The time for half measures is past. The Shadow Wing proved to be a sleek vessel resembling a dragonfly made of black crystal. Its interior glowed with soft blue light and the walls seemed to pulse with life. The 14 chosen wielders, 7 Sylvari and 7 humans, gathered in its central chamber, each pair holding one of the ancient swords. Amara studied her companions. The human soldiers stood tall, trying to hide their fear. The Sylvari warriors were more openly concerned, their opalescent skin reflecting their emotions in subtle color shifts. All knew this mission might be their last. Lysandra addressed them, her voice carrying easily in the chamber. We approach the heart of darkness itself, she said. The void breaks all natural laws. It will attack your mind as well as your body. You must focus only on your sword and your partner. Let nothing else penetrate. Your thoughts. She turned to Amara, standing beside her. Moonwrath held between them. We will lead the attack, she continued. The Master Sword will create a path for the others to follow. When we reach the center of the breach, all 7 weapons must strike simultaneously, focusing on sealing, not destruction. If we attempt to destroy the breach entirely, we risk collapsing both our dimensions. The ship hummed around them as it accelerated toward Jupiter and the massive breach that hung above it, like a festering wound in reality. Through the viewports they could see the swirling darkness growing larger. Void entities moved within it and around it, some attacking the defensive perimeter, others spreading outward into the solar system. Admiral Foster spoke through the communication system. The nuclear missiles have been intercepted. She reported, the entities absorbed the energy as expected. They are growing stronger. The defensive line cannot hold much longer. You must succeed. No pressure, Amara muttered, earning a surprised glance from Lysandra. The ship shuddered as it entered the outer perimeter of the breach zone. The lights flickered and gravity wavered. Amara felt nauseous as reality itself seemed to twist around them. Outside, the viewport space no longer looked like space stars. Bent and stretched colors that had no names flowed through the darkness. Massive void entities turned toward the ship, sensing the power of the 7 swords. They began to converge, their shapeless forms somehow conveying hunger. They know what we intend, Vex said from the pilot's chamber. His scales had darkened to almost black, absorbing the ambient energy to fuel his protective spells. The ship rocked violently as something massive struck it. The shields flared with strain. We cannot reach the center, Lysandra said as damage reports flooded in. The shields will fail before we get there. Amara felt Moonwrath pulse in her hands, responding to her rising emotions. She looked at Lysandra, remembering the soul binding, how it had felt to share consciousness with the alien queen. She reached for that connection, now finding it still open between them. We need to extend the ship's shields. She thought to Lysandra. Create a safe corridor all the way to the breach center. I cannot generate that much power, Lysandra replied in her mind. Even with Vex channeling energy through the ship knot, you Amara thought Moonwrath. The sword responded to their shared thoughts, glowing brighter. The symbols along its length rearranged themselves, forming new patterns. Lysandra understood immediately, holding the sword higher. The other pairs fell back as she and Amara moved to the center of the chamber, focus on the breach. Lysandra instructed them aloud. See the path we will create. Follow it exactly, do not deviate. She turned to Amara, holding her gaze. They would have only one chance at this. If they failed, both their civilizations would fall. Together they raised Moonwrath above their heads. The sword's glow intensified, becoming almost blinding. Energy crackled along its length, arcing between the blade and their bodies. Neither felt pain, though the power coursing through them should have been lethal. The soul binding protected them, joining them more deeply with each passing moment. Through the viewport they could see the void entities closing in massive forms of living darkness. Their wrongness pressed against the ship, making the humans cry out, and even the Sylvari wince in pain. Now, Lysandra commanded. They brought the sword down in a single fluid motion, channeling their combined will through it, directing its power forward. A beam of pure light erupted from Moonwrath's tip, lancing out through the ship's hull without damaging it. The light cut through the darkness of the breach, creating a tunnel, a safe passage through the chaos. The shadow wing surged forward, following the path. Void entities scattered before the light, unable to approach or cross it. For a moment, Amara allowed herself to hope. Then the ship rocked again, more violently than before. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, engines failing, reported Vex. His mental voice strained, hull integrity compromised. We cannot maintain this course. Through the viewport, Amara saw the problem. The light from Moonwrath had created a safe passage, but the ship itself was breaking apart under the strain of the breach energies. They were still too far from the center. We have to continue. The United Earth Defense Council chamber had never hosted such an unusual gathering. Military generals and government officials sat on one side of the massive oval table, while Queen Lysandra and 3 silvery advisors sat on the other. Vex curled around the perimeter of the room, his massive body somehow fitting into the space. Despite its size, human security personnel stood nervously at the doors, their weapons drawn. But everyone knew they would be useless against the aliens. Amara sat at the center point between the two groups, the sword Moonwrath lying on the table before her. Over the past 3 days, the relationship between the archaeologist and the alien queen had evolved from hostility to grudging respect. Lysandra's initial fury had been redirected toward their common enemy, Admiral Carrie Foster. The highest-ranking military official present leaned forward, her uniform crisp despite the chaos of recent days. You expect us to believe that interdimensional monsters are about to invade our solar system, and our only hope is to trust the same aliens who appeared in our skies. Threatening extinction, Lysandra remained perfectly still, her opalescent skin catching the light as she replied, I understand your skepticism, Admiral Foster. I would feel the same in your position. But the facts remain. The void is opening. The entities that dwell there will consume your world and mine if we do not stand together. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared above the table, showing the distortion near Jupiter. It had grown significantly in the past days now, a swirling vortex of darkness that consumed all light that touched it. This is not a natural phenomenon, she continued. Nothing in your science can explain it because it exists partially outside your understanding of reality. The entities that will emerge feed on matter, energy, consciousness itself. They cannot be reasoned with, contained, or destroyed by conventional weapons. Then what good are we, Marcia? Allen, the Secretary General of the United Nations, asked bluntly. Your civilization is thousands of years ahead of ours. If your weapons can't stop these things, what can we possibly contribute? Lysandra glanced at Amara, then back to the human leaders. Numbers. She said simply, we need soldiers. 4,000 years ago, when the void last opened, The Sylvari numbered in the millions. Now we are fewer than 100,000. Our birth rate has declined as our lifespans extended. We cannot field enough warriors to close the breach alone. And these weapons, Amara held up Moonwrath as she spoke. They can harm the void. Entities. Lysandra nodded. The 7 blades were forged specifically to combat them. They can sever their connection to our reality, forcing them back through the breach, but we only have one sword. Admiral Foster pointed out. Lysandra smiled slightly. The other 6 were never lost. They await in my fleet's armory. Then why did you need this one so badly? Secretary Allen demanded. Because Moonwrath is the master key. Lysandra explained. It activates the others. And because she turned to look directly at Amara. According to prophecy, it requires both a Sylvari and human wielder to reach its full potential. The human leaders exchanged glances, some skeptical, others concerned. The prophecy states that when the void returns, 2 chosen wielders will either save both our worlds or destroy them. Lysandra continued. I believed myself to be the Sylvari chosen one. I never expected the human counterpart would be an archaeologist with no combat training. Amara felt the weight of everyone's stares. I didn't ask for this, she said. None who are chosen ever. Duvex observed his mental voice extending to everyone in the room, causing several humans to jump in surprise. The Secretary General recovered, first addressing Lysandra directly. If what you say is true, why did you approach us with threats? Why not simply explain the situation? Because the last time we trusted humans with this knowledge, Lysandra replied, her voice hardening. A faction of your kind attempted to harness the void entities as weapons. Millions died. The sword was hidden as a safeguard against both our species. Worst instincts, Admiral Foster leaned forward. That was 4,000 years ago. We were barely out of the Stone Age. And now you have nuclear weapons, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence. Lysandra countered. Have you truly evolved so much? Your first response to our arrival was to launch missiles. Your governments still war with each other over resources and ideology. Tell me, Admiral, have humans fundamentally changed in 4 millennia, or simply developed more sophisticated ways to destroy each other? The Admiral had no response to that. Amara cleared her throat, drawing attention back to herself. None of this matters now, she said. The breach is opening. The void is coming. We can argue about who deserves blame, or we can work together to survive. Secretary Allen nodded slowly, turning to her advisors. Assuming we believe all this, what exactly do you propose? Lysandra gestured, and the holographic display changed, showing Earth and the surrounding space. A combined fleet, she said. Your most advanced ships alongside ours, positioned at strategic points throughout your solar system. The void entities will emerge from the breach and attempt to spread outward. We must contain them near your outer planets, prevent them from reaching Earth or Mars. What of the colonies on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn? Admiral, Foster asked. They must be evacuated immediately, Lysandra replied. Her expression softened slightly. I regret that we cannot save everyone. The outer colonies are too close to the breach. Anyone still there when it fully opens will be lost. The human leaders protested, but deep down they knew she was right. The outer colonies held thousands of people, but Earth and Mars were home to billions. Training must begin immediately. Vex added. Selected humans must learn to wield the 6 blades alongside Sylvari partners. The weapons require specific mental disciplines to function properly. Admiral Foster looked skeptical. You expect us to master alien mental disciplines in what, a few days? We have no choice. Lysandra said. The breach will be fully open. In less than a week we must be ready. The discussion continued for hours as plans were made, evacuation orders drafted, defense strategies formulated. Throughout it all, Amara sat quietly observing the 2 species trying to bridge millennia of separation and mistrust. When the meeting finally ended, the human leaders filed out, each lost in their own thoughts. Only Admiral Foster remained behind, approaching Amara as Lysandra conferred with her advisors. The Admiral sat beside her, speaking quietly. This Sword, she said, nodding toward Moonwrath. You truly believe it's magical, not magic, Amara replied. Technology so advanced we can't understand it. The Sylvari themselves don't fully comprehend how the swords were made. Their ancient master craftsmen took their secrets to the grave. Foster studied her closely. You trust her, this alien queen? Amara considered the question. I believe she's telling the truth about the threat, she said carefully. As for trusting her, she glanced toward Lysandra, whose silver hair caught the light as she moved. She's fighting to save her people just as we are. I respect that. The Admiral nodded. Standing before the weight of responsibility settled more heavily on her shoulders. Then I suppose we go to war against monsters. From another dimension, she laughed without humor. All those years at the Academy and they never covered this. As the Admiral walked away, Lysandra approached, taking her place. Do your leaders believe us? She asked. Enough to prepare, Amara replied. Whether they truly believe or just fear. Your ships is another question. Lysandra nodded. It is sufficient. What matters is action, not belief. Her violet eyes studied Amara intently. You have impressed me, human. You speak with wisdom beyond your years. Amara smiled. Thinly, 35. Not exactly a child, Lysandra laughed, a sound like silver bells. I am 972 by your reckoning. To me you are all children. But she placed a hand on Amara's arm, her touch surprisingly warm. Some children show. Promise. Vex uncurled himself, stretching his long body. We must begin your training, he said to Amara. You must learn to truly wield Moonwrath before the breach opens. Amara looked down at the sword. Its symbols shifted and changed as she watched, almost as if it were trying to communicate. How am I supposed to learn alien sword fighting in less than a week? Not sword fighting, Lysandra corrected. Soul binding. The blade is an extension of your will. It responds to thought and emotion more than physical skill. Although she smiled, showing those two sharp teeth that unsettled Amara, some physical training would not be amiss. The next days passed in a blur of activity. The combined human and Sylvari forces prepared for war. Massive evacuation ships launched toward the outer colonies, hoping to save as many as possible. Before the breach fully opened, defense perimeters were established. Ships were retrofitted with Sylvari technology to give them at least some effectiveness against the void entities, and Amara trained hour after hour, day after day, until her body ached and her mind felt raw. Lysandra was a demanding teacher, pushing her beyond what she thought possible. The Sylvari queen had lived for centuries and fought in countless battles. Her skill with Moonwrath was breathtaking, the blade seeming to move before she did, responding to her thoughts as much as her movements. Physical combat was only part of the training, however. The mental disciplines were far more challenging. Amara had to learn to merge her consciousness with the sword, to feel its energy and guide it rather than control it. Vex helped with this part of her education, his telepathic abilities allowing him to guide her through the complex meditative states required. Yea. The fifth day, with the breach now visible from Earth as a dark spot in the night sky near Jupiter, Amara and Lysandra stood in the training chamber aboard the Queen's flagship. Moonwrath lay on a... Amara stood frozen in her apartment, clutching the sword to her chest. The alien ships had appeared 3 hours ago, and the world had descended into chaos. Emergency broadcasts had cut off 30 minutes after first contact. Global defense systems had failed simultaneously. Governments were silent. Military response had been swift but ineffective, their missiles dissolving into light before reaching the massive vessels. She knew she should hide, take the sword somewhere remote. But something told her it would be pointless. They would find her no matter where she went. The sword pulsed warmly in her hands, as if agreeing with her thoughts. When her apartment door disintegrated into splinters, Amara wasn't surprised. She had been expecting them. Even so, the sight that greeted her made her breath catch. The being that stood in the doorway was tall, nearly 7 feet, with a slender frame that somehow suggested both fragility and immense strength. Her skin was pale with an opalescent quality that caught the light and refracted it in subtle rainbows. Her face was hauntingly beautiful, with high cheekbones and full lips that would have seemed human, if not for their unusual lavender hue. But it was her eyes that held Amara transfixed. large, almond-shaped eyes with vertical pupils like a cat's, set in irises the color of amethyst. They regarded Amara with ancient intelligence and undisguised fury. The being's ears extended upward and back from her head, coming to elegant points. Her silver hair flowed like liquid mercury down to her waist, unbound and shimmering with its own light. She wore what appeared to be armor, though it moved like fabric flowing around her body as she stepped into the apartment. It was the color of moonlight, on water shifting between silver and blue with hints of purple where the light struck it. Human, the being said, her voice musical yet cold. You will surrender the moon wrath to its rightful owner. Amara tightened her grip on the sword, though she knew she had no hope of using it effectively against this creature. Who are you? She asked, surprised at the steadiness of her own voice. What gives you the right to threaten our world? The alien laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I am Lysandra, queen of the Silvari Empire, guardian of the Seven Realms, and that blade you hold so clumsily is the key to destruction beyond your comprehension. A sound like thunder rumbled through the apartment as another figure entered. Behind Lysandra came a creature that defied logic. It resembled a dragon from human mythology, but sleeker, more serpentine. Its body was 20 feet long, yet somehow it fit through the human-sized doorway without difficulty. Its scales shifted between midnight blue and deep purple, with flecks of silver that mirrored the stars. Its 6 limbs ended in elegant claws that left no marks on the floor, despite their apparent sharpness. Its wings were folded tightly against its body, but Amara could tell they would span twice the dragon's length when extended. The dragon's eyes fixed on Amara, intelligent and assessing, curious. It said, its voice resonating directly in her mind. The blade does not reject her touch. Lysandra turned slightly toward the dragon, her expression shifting from anger to something more complex. Impossible, she whispered. The sword began to glow brighter symbols along its length, rearranging themselves in patterns that hurt. Amara's eyes to look at directly. The light intensified until it filled the apartment, washing out all other colors. Both Amara and Lysandra cried out as visions flooded their minds, shared memories that belonged to neither of them. They saw stars being born and dying, civilizations rising and falling. They saw the ancient war between dimensions, the creation of the Eldritch Gate to seal the breach, and the sacrifice made by both humans and Silvari to prevent universal collapse. They saw Moonwrath being forged in the heart of a dying star, its purpose to serve as both key and lock to the gate that separated the dimensions. They saw it being hidden, deliberately taken from its wielder, until both species had evolved enough to face the coming threat together. When the vision faded, Amara found herself on her knees, gasping for breath. The sword still clutched in her hands felt different now, somehow alive and aware. She looked up to see Lysandra standing rigid, her expression unreadable. The prophecy, Lysandra murmured. A human and Silvari united by the blade. The dragon moved, closer its scales, shifting colors rapidly. The timing aligns with the celestial predictions. My queen, the void breach will reopen within the lunar cycle. Lysandra stared at Amara, her fury still evident, but now directed elsewhere. Human, it seems we have been maneuvered into an alliance by powers beyond our understanding. The sword chose you as its human bearer, though I cannot fathom why. My name is Amara, not human. Amara replied, finding her voice. And I don't understand any of this. You will, Lysandra said grimly, because if we don't work together, both our worlds will cease to exist before your next sunrise, over the next 24 hours. Amara learned more about the universe than she had in her entire life as a scientist. The Silvari, she discovered, were an ancient race. They had achieved interstellar travel when humans were still living in caves. They had explored, mapped, and in some cases colonized vast regions of the galaxy before deliberately withdrawing to their home systems. 10,000 years ago. The void entities, as Lysandra called them, were beings from another dimension, a place where the laws of physics as humans understood them did not apply. They fed on reality itself, consuming matter, energy, and even time. Their first incursion had nearly destroyed both human and Silvari civilizations. 4,000 years ago, the two species had fought together, forging 7 weapons of power that could harm the extra-dimensional invaders. Moonwrath was the master key able to activate the others but also capable of opening or sealing the Eldritch Gate, the dimensional barrier between worlds. After the war ended, the Sylvari had hidden the sword, believing humans too primitive and warlike to be trusted with such power. Now, the dimensional barriers were weakening again. The void was returning, and the ancient prophecy that a human and Sylvari would wield Moonwrath together was coming to pass. "So why am I involved in this?" Amara asked, as they stood on the bridge of Lysandra's shuttle, ascending toward the massive warship that hovered above Earth. "I just found the sword by accident." "There are no accidents where Moonwrath is concerned." Vex replied the dragon had introduced himself properly after their shared vision. He now lay curled at the rear of the bridge, his massive body somehow taking up less space than should have been physically possible. "The sword has been waiting for its wielders. The fact that you could touch it without being destroyed marks you as chosen for what Amara pressed to either save our worlds or doom them," Lysandra said, her tone making it clear which outcome she expected. The shuttle docked with the warship, and Amara got her first look at Sylvari civilization. The ship's interior was vast, far larger than it appeared from outside. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The floors were smooth and warm beneath her feet, not metal or stone but something organic. Sylvari crew members stopped and stared, as Lysandra led Amara through the corridors. They resembled their queen, though none matched her height or beauty. All had the distinctive pointed ears and unusual eye colors ranging from gold to deep blue to vibrant green. Most wore simple uniforms that, like their queen's armor, seemed to flow and adjust with their movements. "They fear you," Vex commented in Amara's mind, his mental voice carrying a hint of amusement. "No human has ever set foot on a royal vessel. They should fear her," Lysandra replied, aloud, apparently able to hear the dragon's telepathic communication. "She carries Moonwrath untrained and unprepared. She could destroy us all with a thought." Amara clutched the sword tighter. "I have no intention of destroying anyone. I just want to understand what's happening." Lysandra stopped before a massive door that shimmered like a heat mirage. "You will understand soon enough. We have summoned the War Council. The situation must be explained to our military leaders, and your human governments must be contacted. We cannot face the void alone." The door dissolved at Lysandra's approach, revealing a circular chamber with a large table at its center. Around it sat 12 Sylvari in elaborate armor. Their designs varied, suggesting different ranks or functions, but all were clearly military in nature. They rose as Lysandra entered, bowing deeply to their queen. Their eyes widened at the sight of Amara, some hands moving to weapons before Lysandra raised a hand to stay them. "The human bears." "Moonwrath," she announced, her voice carrying easily in the large space. "The prophecy is upon us." One of the Sylvari, a male with copper skin and golden eyes, stepped forward. "My queen, surely you cannot believe this primitive creature is the prophesied wielder. The humans attacked our scouts in the outer systems. They cannot be trusted." "I witnessed the vision myself, Commander Alari," Lysandra replied coldly. "The sword accepts her. Moonwrath has chosen." Alari looked at Amara with undisguised contempt. "Even if the prophecy is true, we do not need them. We can seal the breach ourselves as we did before. Before we had 10,000 trained warriors and 5 great dragons," Lysandra reminded him. "Now we have barely 1,000 warriors, and only Vex remains of the dragon kindred. We need allies." The War Council erupted in arguments, some agreeing with Lysandra, others siding with Commander Alari. Amara stood silent, watching the aliens debate her fate and the fate of her planet. She felt small, insignificant, in the face of their ancient power and knowledge, yet the sword in her hand pulsed warmly, giving her courage. "They speak as if I'm not here," she thought, "because to many of them you are not." Amara Blackwood woke up early that morning with a strange feeling in her chest. Something was different about today. The archaeologist from Mars Colony had been digging at the alien ruins on Proxima B for 6 months now, with little to show for it. Her funding was running out, and the Earth Coalition was growing impatient. They wanted results, and she had found nothing but dust and broken stone. She pulled on her excavation suit and packed her tools. The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystalline structures that jutted from the ground like massive teeth. Amara had named the site Crystal Cathedral, though her colleagues laughed at her for it. They said she was too romantic for a scientist, but Amara believed that imagination was just as important as method today. She would explore the deepest chamber. They had cleared the debris yesterday, and scans showed a hollow space beyond a thin wall. It was probably empty like all the others, but Amara felt drawn to it. The walk through the ruins was quiet. Her boots crunched on ancient soil as she made her way down the winding path to the main excavation site. Most of her team was still sleeping. Only the security drones hovered silently, keeping watch inside the main structure. Amara switched on her headlamp. The walls glowed faintly in response, a bioluminescent reaction they had discovered early in the dig. The deeper she went, the brighter the glow became, as if the building itself knew she was there and was lighting her way. At the end of the main corridor, Amara faced the wall they had uncovered yesterday. It shimmered slightly, not like stone but more like liquid glass, frozen in time. She pressed her hand against it, surprised to find it warm. The wall rippled beneath her touch, then simply melted away. Amara gasped, stepping back as the wall vanished, revealing a small chamber beyond. Unlike the rest of the ruins, this room was perfectly preserved. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to move when she looked away. And there in the center, floating in a beam of light, was a sword. It was unlike any weapon Amara had ever seen. The blade was about 30 inches long, black as night, but with a strange inner light that shifted and moved like oil on water. The handle was wrapped in a material that resembled leather but felt like silk when she reached out to touch it. Every scientific instinct told her not to touch the artifact without proper documentation and safety protocols, but something stronger pulled at her. The sword hummed as if calling to her. Amara reached out, her fingers trembling slightly as they closed around the handle. The moment she touched it, visions flashed through her mind. Stars, exploding worlds being born. Creatures of light and shadow fighting across the cosmos. A woman with pointed ears and eyes like amethysts raising the very sword Amara now held, commanding armies that stretched beyond the horizon. The visions faded as quickly as they had come, leaving Amara breathless. The sword felt lighter than it should, as if it weighed nothing at all. Her scanner indicated it was made of materials unknown to human science, yet it was over 4,000 years old. Amara knew she should report the find immediately. Call in the whole team, document everything. But another feeling stronger than professional duty told her to keep it secret, at least for now. She carefully wrapped the sword in protective cloth and slipped it into her sample case. As she sealed the case, a faint pulse of energy rippled outward like a stone dropped in still water. Amara felt it pass through her but thought nothing of it. Simply another strange property of this alien place. She had no way of knowing that the pulse was a signal. A beacon that was already racing across the stars far away in another part of the galaxy. Queen Lysandra of the Silvari sat bolt upright on her crystalline throne. Pain shot through her body, making her gasp. Her guards rushed forward, but she waved them away with a slender hand. Her silver hair flowed around her like water as she stood, her violet eyes wide with shock. After 4,000 years, someone had found Moonwrath, her royal blade. The key to the Eldritch Gate. The sword that could end worlds if wielded incorrectly. Lysandra moved to the scrying pool in the center of her throne room. The liquid silver surface rippled as she passed her hand over it, showing her the sword and the human female who now possessed it. How could this be? The sword had been hidden with the strongest concealment spells her mother could weave. No human should have been able to even see it, let alone touch it without being destroyed. Yet this one not only held Moonwrath, but the blade accepted her. Cold fear gripped Lysandra's heart. There was only one explanation: the prophecy was coming to pass. Vex the queen stalked through the palace corridors, her voice echoing off the living crystal walls. The guard stood straighter as she passed, sensing her fury. The air around her crackled with energy, making the smaller creatures that served in the palace scurry away in fear. She reached the royal chambers and flung open the doors. Vex, her companion, lay curled on a massive cushion, his scales shifting between midnight blue and deep purple as he dreamed he was smaller than the war dragons of old. barely the size of a transport ship, but his intelligence far exceeded his ancestors. Vex opened one eye, a swirl of silver and gold regarding his queen. Someone has found Moonwrath. Lysandra said, her voice tight with anger. The dragon's second eye opened, both now fully alert. He uncurled his serpentine body, stretching wings that seemed too delicate to support flight, yet could carry him between stars. Who the dragon asked, his voice resonating directly in Lysandra's mind, not spoken aloud. A human. Lysandra spat the word like a curse. On the third planet of the insignificant star system, we abandoned millennia ago. The sword accepts her touch. Vex rose fully, now his scales rippling with concern. That is not possible unless the prophecy is true. Lysandra finished for him. Yes, I know. The queen began pacing, her long fingers weaving patterns in the air as she thought the ancient texts spoke of a time when the void would return, when the barriers between dimensions would weaken. A human and Sylvari joined by Moonwrath would either save both worlds or destroy them. But the prophecy was meant for the distant future. Vex reminded her thousands more. Years' time moves differently near the void. Lysandra replied. Perhaps what seemed distant to the prophets is now upon us. She stopped pacing suddenly. Decisive. Prepare the warship. We sail for Earth. The humans have grown too numerous, too quickly spreading across their solar system like a virus. If one has found Moonwrath, others will seek it. The sword must be recovered. What of the human? Vex asked, rising and stretching his 6 limbs. If the prophecy is true, we may need her. Lysandra admitted reluctantly, but I will not decide her fate until I look into her eyes and determine if she is worthy. If not, her hand closed into a fist and the air around it darkened. Then she will learn why the Sylvari were once feared across 3 galaxies. Amara spent weeks studying the sword in her small apartment in New Seattle. She had smuggled it back to Earth, claiming to her team that the chamber had been empty. Another disappointment. She felt guilty for the deception, but the sword seemed to whisper to her, urging secrecy. She had learned little despite all her tests. The symbols on the blade changed constantly, never appearing the same way twice. The material was unlike anything in human science. Not metal, not stone, not crystal, but something that shared properties. With all 3, it could cut through anything without effort, yet when she ran her finger along the edge, it felt smooth, never drawing blood. The dreams had started the first night she brought it home. Visions of stars and battles of creatures with pointed ears and eyes in impossible colors, commanding forces beyond human comprehension. And always the woman with silver hair and violet eyes looking directly at Amara, as if seeing her across time and space. Amara was making notes about the latest changes in the symbols when the first tremor hit. Her coffee cup rattled across the table, spilling its contents onto her notes. She grabbed for it, thinking it was a small earthquake, common enough in New Seattle, built as it was on unstable ground. Then came the sound. A high, keening wail that made her teeth ache and her ears hurt. Glass shattered around her as picture frames fell from walls. Electronics sparked and died. The sword on her desk began to glow brighter than she had ever seen it. The symbols racing along its length, Amara staggered to the window, fighting waves of dizziness. The sight that greeted her stole her breath away. A massive ship hung in the sky above downtown New Seattle. It looked like no human vessel, enormous beyond comprehension. Its design reminded her of a cathedral or palace made of twisted metal and living wood. Lightning crackled around it, forming a shield that distorted the air. She switched on her comm unit but heard only static. All channels were dead. Similar reports would later confirm that identical ships had appeared simultaneously over every major human settlement from Earth to the outer colonies. The first message came not through technology, but directly into the mind of every human being. Return what you have stolen or face extinction. Amara looked at the sword on her desk, now pulsing with light and time with her racing heartbeat. She knew without doubt they had come for it, and they were willing to destroy humanity to get it back. Aboard her warship, Queen Lysandra watched the primitive human cities through viewing portals. Their technology was crude, their buildings ungainly, their weapon systems had been disabled with embarrassing ease. They had not even detected the Sylvari fleet. until it was directly above them. Our sensors have located Moonwrath, my queen. The navigator reported it is in a dwelling in the city designated New Seattle, Lysandra. Nodded. The human female from her visions.